Hi, I'm Ryan Malaty. Welcome to Inside the Documentary. On today's episode, we will be discussing An Act of Love, the story which follows Frank Schaefer, a reverend of the United Methodist Church who was put on trial by the church for officiating his own son's same-sex marriage. And today we are lucky enough to have one of the producers, Mike C. Manning, director and writer, Scott Shepard, and the Reverend himself, Frank Schaefer, in the studio with us, all coming up right here on the Popcorn Talk Network.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies. And now, here's Popcorn Talk's Inside the Documentary.
Well, okay. What an honor, a pleasure. Thank you all so much for coming in here today. Mike C. Manning, producer on the film, director and writer Scott Shepard, and of course the Reverend Frank Schaefer. Thank you all so much. Before we get into a little interview with you, we have a lot to talk about. This is powerful stuff. Let's go ahead and reintroduce the viewers who may or may not have seen the film yet to a little trailer of the film. Coming right here.
I knew that the Methodist Church wouldn't allow it, and I knew if I asked him, he would do it.
This was a private affair that was nobody's business.
At any cost, we will get rid of Frank Schaefer.
The straw that broke the camel's back was that Frank conducted the same-sex marriage for Tim.
Now that's the guy in orange we just heard there.
The church set it up to look exactly like Law and Order.
This trial is not about the book of discipline. This trial is not about the Bible.
A father's love for his son preempts the book of discipline.
Amen to that.
Yeah. Making injustice stop comes in the form of protest.
The practice of homosexuality is incompatible with Christian teaching.
This is as much my church as it is yours.
I had to help my son. He was hurt by the doctrine of the church. It was an act of love.
An act of love. So you came up with that title, did you?
Actually, I didn't, but I used that phrase a lot.
You've used the phrase, and that's where the title came from. Is you would use the expression, it was an act of love.
Mm-hmm. You came up with the title, you just didn't know it.
You just didn't know it. You came up with the documentary, you just didn't know it.
That's right.
That's right.
Well, okay. I mean, really powerful film. I enjoyed it. I watched it twice before I came to do this this interview with you guys. Let's go ahead. Let me ask you just real quick, Mike, Scott, Frank. What was it like working together on this project? Like, how did it all come together? You know, from the spark of the idea of the story when it was happening to you know, let's make a film about this movement, about this story, this man. Kind of, how did it come together?
Yeah, so it started when I read an article about Frank as his trial was underway. This was November of 2013, and I read an article about this pastor in eastern Pennsylvania who had been found guilty by the Methodist Church for doing his son's wedding. And he was in the penalty phase then, as the church calls it, the second day of the trial, where they were deciding, okay, you're guilty, what are we going to do about this person? And I just became so engrossed in this story. It was so compelling. It felt totally relevant, but it was such a strange twist on what's happening in America with the LGBT movement, that it's this church trial in a UMC camp gymnasium. And, you know, Frank was then, of course, defrocked, and he was no longer a minister. So I just connected with this because my father was a United Methodist minister in the Midwest, actually.
Okay.
But so this was a side of the church that I didn't know anything about at all. This side of the church that put people on trial, that had their rule book, the Book of Discipline, that says that homosexuality is incompatible with Christian teaching and other things. And so I tracked down Frank because I knew that if I didn't do this film, somebody was going to, because it needed to be made. I felt the story had to be told and told in depth. And so I reached out to Frank, and Frank agreed. I think in part maybe because I could relate to your kids and they could relate to me. Is that right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the passion that you had for making this film really sold me. And I apologize, I just ate some popcorn. It's kind of stuck in my throat.
I was eating popcorn and I'm like,
this is not what I sound usually. So.
Popcorn talk is kind of an oxymoron.
Yeah.
It's delicious, but it's
makes a good decoration though.
There you go.
Popcorn talk.
Now we should eat it without our hands.
So yeah, actually, when Scott called me early on, I think it was early January or December of 2013, I at first I was like, what, a documentary? I mean, I was so like inside of the story that I couldn't see the bigger picture at that point, you know. But Scott was very persistent, and so he kept talking. And we talked long times. I remember on the phone.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, I thought I would talk to you on the phone for 5 minutes,
Yeah.
and 2 hours later we're getting off the phone, and it was really late on the East Coast.
Yeah. So I was skeptical. I wasn't sure that that's something I wanted to give my permission for. So
yeah, no kidding. I mean, a man standing up to an organization like the church.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let me ask you this: United Methodist Church. All right, we'll get into the church trials and the Book of Discipline and stuff like that. But before we go down that road, is this the trials and the discipline? Is this something that is similar in different churches? I mean, does the Catholic Church have trials? Do other different do other sects of Christianity and beyond have the same kind of process that you went through?
Some do. The Roman Catholic Church does have a similar process, and other larger denominations, mainline churches, have that. Though a lot of the mainline churches also are congregational in structure, like the UCC, for instance, the Reformed Church, the Presbyterian Church. And so there's a lot more, how should I say it? There's a lot less involvement by the hierarchy of the church. And so each congregation sort of has more of a say, and so it happens less in those churches. But it does happen, and it does happen in other churches as well. And it feels like the Inquisition, actually.
Sure,
I mean,
it's
a very medieval kind of a concept, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, does this happen often, or it was just luck of the draw that yours happened to get national attention and it happened to start all these movements and inspire filmmakers, or is it were you just like one of the brave souls who went out and put yourself out there?
No, actually, I didn't pursue it. I didn't want a trial. It was brought to me by the church, and it doesn't happen often for LGBTQ related issues, but it does happen on a variety of things. But usually there's literally no press involved. But I think because of what happened just in our society in that year, 2013, there was a SCOTUS decision then, and one state after another adopted legal gay marriage. There was just such a momentum and movement, and then into that momentum, for the church to put somebody on trial for performing a same-sex wedding for their own son.
Right.
I think that was the wrong move on the part of the church, and it really sparked interest.
I mean, considering the backbone of Christianity is
family and community,
kind of rests on the love between a father and his son.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
more literally
the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. That's right. I never made that connection. You could be a theologian.
Well, there you have it, folks.
I mean, I did bring my Bible, which I do have a question for you in a minute. But you were on this cusp of this wave of changing times, right? And it just the perfect timing of it all. For you to be put into the spotlight right as, like you said, society is kind of changing their ways for the better, thank goodness. But still, there had to be a precedent that was set, and it was set with you. But it took 6 years, right? You officiated your son Tim's wedding, and then there's a statute of limitations, right? Of 6 years. For an offense against the Book of Discipline, which is the doctrine of the church. And it almost went 6 years before you didn't have to worry about it or hear about it. It wasn't going to be a big deal. But right up at the last few weeks, somebody files an official complaint.
26 days.
26 days before. Now, that's got. I'm thinking when I'm watching this thing, I'm screaming like conspiracy. Like they. They're out for blood.
I shouted some other things too. I was actually really mad at that point. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe 26 days. I mean, 26 days later, and I would have been in the clear.
That's like this. Oh, that's 28 days later is the zombie movie?
Yeah, 28 days later. So it's almost.
It's like, good or bad, things happen after, a lot can happen in a month.
26 days. Well, and that was, while Scott was filming, so I joined the project because I had worked with Kate Logan, who's she's the producer on the film, and she's not here. But she and I did Kidnap for Christ together. And we were sort of riding the wave of that. It had just sold to Showtime, and I was like, okay, Kate, like I'm not gonna, I'm gonna put my hat on the the hook and take a break from documentaries for a while. And she said, but I just started working with this guy Scott Shepard, and this is the story. And I had seen Frank on CNN, and I'd heard a little bit about his story. So then actually at the time I was attending United Methodist Church. And I didn't know anything about the Book of Disciplines. I didn't know, I knew a little bit, but not nearly as much as, the law and order stuff that goes on behind the scenes in the church. So I watched his stuff, and I met with Scott, and his passion, like Frank said, just came through, and I said, all right, sign me up. And so Scott immediately, set on this journey and meeting with people and getting interviews, as you do with a documentary. You gather, with normal film, it's sort of like, here's the script and all this pre-production, and then you shoot and you edit. With documentaries, you gather as much information as possible, and you sort of form the story as you go. And so Scott was doing that, and I get a call one day, and Scott was updating me as he was on his journey, and he goes, so I just found out that there was just like this whole group within the church, and they kind of went against Frank, and it wasn't even about the wedding, but then it probably is for some people. And so and he was telling me about this conspiracy, and it was one of those. It was like a 5-minute call, but I was like, Scott, what happened next? What happened next? What's this? And he goes, I don't know, Mike, but I'm gonna find out. And he's so then it took the film in this other direction that like we were all sort of running as fast as we can, like, oh, let's find out. And that ended up being the film, which I commend Scott, because as a filmmaker, he went in with like, he funneled it in. He said, there is a story here. Right. I want to tell it, but I don't know what it is. And then he just sort of followed the rabbit hole down to what ended up being the film. And I'm really proud. It's for me, at least, from the beginning conversations to what the film is now, I couldn't be prouder. So
I had a feeling though that there was something under the surface, because my father was a minister in a small town. I've seen small town church politics my entire life. So I know how it operates. I know that these groups of people come together against other factions in the church, against their pastors. So I had a sense that there was a lot more going on than was really being covered by the media at the time of the trial.
There's a lot going on in this documentary. And it was really, really well made. I laughed, I cried. I mean, I teared up. I don't cry. But, and there's so many levels, and to watch it play out. At one point, you actually go back and visit Germany, where you're from. Yeah. And I ask, what's it like there compared to here when it comes to church and state and issues that you had to deal with coming to here in America?
So in some regards, Germany is a little bit further along. And the mainline churches, besides the Roman Catholic Church, of course, but the Protestant mainline church is definitely further along than we are here in the States, But there are still issues, and I actually grew up in a Baptist church in Germany, and that was very conservative. So, and there's that type of Christianity in Germany as well. So actually there were a couple of articles in 2 major newspapers about me, what I'm doing here, and I read some of the comments that people left, and they weren't kind.
Oh, that's the internet for you.
This guy is embarrassing us in America.
You get those in America too, though.
Well, yeah. Well, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, if you scroll down right now, actually, on the YouTube page, we should have some comments right here, now.
That's right.
But freedom of speech and whatnot. Freedom.
That's right.
Except for the freedom to go into a bond that's recognized by the state or by the church. Now is in my head. I kept on, when you were making the documentary, you did it very well, but I kept on getting so confused as to my understanding of church and state. Now here you have the Obergefell-Hodges decision in June 25th, 2015, that legalized same-sex marriage across America, but you were defrocked in December 2015. Is that correct?
No, actually 2013.
13. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. So you were right before that wave of legality. Do you think that had this trial come after the legalization of gay marriage, countrywide, do you think that things would have been different, or do you think that the church is on its own moral path or its own societal path? I mean, the church is made up of people.
Yeah.
Right? People who live in this country.
Yeah.
We're on different roads, and you have church trials, which I didn't even. And you're right. Like the way you set it up, Law and Order. I mean, it's just like that. It's like, like you were making a high school play about it, which is it's totally fascinating to me. You have the judge who's a bishop, and the jurors are fellow pastors, pastors are your peers. Some were on your side. We had Corey Pena.
Corinne.
Yeah.
Oh, Corinne?
Yep.
Pena.
Sorry. Corinne Pena. She was totally like, it's his son. It's his kid. What are we doing here? But then you have the guy in the orange. Dale.
Guy in the orange.
Guy in the orange. So you have and you perfectly portrayed the other side of the fence, without it being too, fundamental, ridiculous, or radical, or angry, or however the other side can get, because that, as we've seen. So it was a nice balance. Do you think that things have really changed in the past 2 years? I mean, since you were defrogged till now, or is it kind of the same but just with different laws put in place in America?
That's actually a very interesting question, and I don't know if I can answer it with authority, but my guess is that things have changed somewhat. Since my trial, there hasn't been a trial, even though there have been more than 50 pastors and a bishop that have performed gay weddings and came out like publicly stating that we did this, I did this. And none of them have been put on trial. So
far.
Well, so far, yeah. So far.
So not a single person has been put on trial in the same way that you were back in 2013.
Right. Nobody has been on the trial.
It's got to say something.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of pending ones now. We could see several actually this year. It's possible. There's been a lot of complaints filed.
Really?
Recently for weddings. There's a group of 15 people just came out in New York that are clergy or clergy candidates. So more people are breaking the rules than ever before, and more people are filing complaints against them than ever before. So I think the church is kind of on its own track a little bit.
Yeah,
the church is definitely evolving, but I think if your trial was today, it might have had the exact same outcome because the rules are the same within the church.
Well, and also we've talked about him actually being put on trial was partly because of LGBT discrimination, we'll call it, but it was also because of a division within his specific church. So I think that it's two-part. It's one, it's church specific, and then on the second hand, you have this, there was a poll, the CNN poll, what was it, 2 years ago, said that it was our nation had reached a 50-50. 50% of the people polled supported gay marriage, 50% against. So it was for the first time, and then after that it was slowly, 51, 52, 53, and now I think it's under 25, it's 76% of people support same-sex marriage. So the trend is clearly heading in one direction, but I think that in the church, as Scott will talk about later, I'm sure, you still have, General Conference is next week, and they have expressed that the people that are in support of equality within the church have expressed doubt that things are going to change that significantly because the church seems to be on its own trajectory. So I think that, whether or not Frank would be tried today, it would be a church by church basis, and things are still happening. But it's the trend towards equality, both in America and in the church community, I think is unequivocally headed in the right direction.
Okay,
I think
that's optimistic, realistic, and well said.
Thank you.
You should come sit next to me more often.
Thanks, buddy. Anytime.
It's great, and you brought up this poll, 50-50. But I would say I would guess that if the poll was how many of you are Christian, it'd probably be more than 50% of people in America who are religious are Christian, right? And yet there's always that connection between whether or not being gay or having gay marriage or whatever it is wrong because that's what the church says. And the difference between a person's own personal uncomfortability or personal beliefs, wherever they come from, wherever they stem from, I feel like they're so often saying it's lifted off their shoulders and put onto the churches. Oh, you know, I'd be fine with gay marriage if it wasn't for the church. You know, the church says no.
Yeah.
And does it really? That's what I wanted to ask you today. That's why I brought my Bible. I was wondering. I mean, there is so much love in here.
Yeah.
And you'd be hard pressed to find. I mean, there's books written. Was there like 60 different books?
Yeah, more than 60 books.
More than 60 books over hundreds of years of holy men transcribing words down, and a lot of them are songs, a lot of them are stories. More like some are like history, like this guy attacked
poetry,
this guy.
Yeah.
Some are poetry, and then a lot of words are just words to live by, nice proverbs and parables. And but I couldn't imagine. I think whenever it's been brought up, there's maybe like one line in this whole stack of books that says like, man should not lay with man or something like that.
Yeah, and
isn't it just one thing?
Yeah. Well, actually, we always talk about the 6 clobber passages that people just use relentlessly, and that's one of them out of Leviticus. But you're absolutely right. Compared to the majority of what you read in the Holy Scriptures, it's a tiny, tiny portion. It really is. And let's not forget there are other bad things in there too. Like there are passages that justify ethnic cleansing. There are passages that justify selling your daughter into slavery and gives detailed instructions on how to do that.
Well, I mean, who hasn't been there?
So, and but so that's where you take a book like that and you don't read it literally, or else you could be in trouble. You end up in jail if you actually took the whole thing literally.
Pretty sure I'm wearing cloth and linen at the same time, so please don't stone me.
There you go.
Sorry.
Oh yeah.
I'm sorry. And I had shellfish on the way here. So.
See, that's another. No,
not here, but you could get stoned in Colorado because that's now legal. So.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, where's my soundbite?
You can an act of love. You can get stoned in Colorado.
An act of love too. So it's interesting to me how so many people, and like you said, it's not just gay marriage. It's ethnic discrimination as well. I mean, and other vehicles of hate that are kind of. People use this book and the doctrine of the church as an excuse to feel that way.
Yeah,
I feel like it might be that way, and I don't know if I'm completely right or wrong. I'm no authority on it, but I just feel like this book isn't going anywhere. It's not being edited anytime soon. So I mean, there will always be people who will believe what they want to believe and use this book to justify whatever feelings they have.
But isn't that sad though? Because I mean, here we have, Reverend Frank Schaeffer. We have the son of a pastor and somebody that has been, you grew up with the church. Right. I did not grow up religious. I found religion by myself and then have become more religious. And I've seen religion do amazing, amazing things in my own life and the lives of people very close to me. Yeah. So it's kind of terrible how a few bad apples ruin the whole bunch. It's like there's so much love at this table and from people that I've experienced within the religious community, and it's like, so every time you see a news clipping or somebody using religion as not a dialogue for love and community and faith building and that sort of thing, but they they use religion as a weapon, and I feel like just shouting like to everyone that might be questioning religion or not religious or has negative views on religion, I feel like waving my hands in the air and be like, guys, that's not us. Like, it's
they're right there.
It's right. It's, guys, it's like religion is not meant to be a weapon. It's not meant to divide. It's meant to bring us together. And I just think that everyone needs to know that and to feel that love, because everyone has a right to in my opinion, everyone has a right to God's love. And if somebody is preventing that, then that person, I cannot see how that person is right. I just can't.
I love it.
Popcorn moment.
Good job.
No,
that's another theologian right there.
I love it. I love when people come here and express themselves and stand up for what they believe to be right and true, especially, I mean, when it comes to talks like this, religion, homosexuality, or any kind of controversial topic, it's always hard to sit down in front of a camera, which could be potentially how many people all over the world from here until the end of time, no pressure.
Right.
But to speak about something that is controversial in knowing that your opinions and views are out there in front of people, to come here and to say the way you feel. I always love it when people do that, and I know that whoever's watching really appreciates honesty too and truth.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you brought to the table, especially in that moment in the documentary. That was one of my tearing up moments. That powerful moment where you said you had felt the touch of God and knew what you had to do, and I couldn't help but I mean, I'll just make the comparison of when Jesus went to go pray, and realized what he had to do, sacrifice himself, and I had to make that comparison because it seemed like you were about to give up everything that you loved.
Yeah.
Your whole life, or 20 plus years, you had been a reverend at this church, and you were about to go out there, and because you felt it to be right, you decided to say things that you knew could strip you away from the life that you loved, the career that you built, the job that you held sacred. And that was such a beautiful moment. That was such a powerful moment. I think it resonated throughout the film and throughout the community. And it really did change things. I mean, but you're back. It all worked out.
Yeah,
not to spoil anything. You can look on Wikipedia, you know.
Yeah, right.
But luckily, the story, I mean, it turned around and made everything for the better. I mean, could you have planned it any better than that? Or did you just have to let go and say, all right, here we go?
I tell you what, I actually, when I went through that moment, I knew I was going to be defrocked. It wasn't that I thought I might be defrocked. I knew that if I were going to speak up and were going to say what I did say, then that would be the end of me and my career in the United Methodist Church, and my paycheck and my health insurance, and and all that good stuff that we always protect so badly. At the same time, I sensed that I had to do this for my son Tim, and for all of our LGBTQ, especially teenagers in the church. And what really pushed me to that moment, and I don't think that comes out in the film enough, was really when my son Tim gave his testimony in the witness stand. That was right before the break, or like sometime before the break when I went into prayer. And I was so proud of him. He shared it with such grace. I mean, he was basically facing his bully, the church that had pushed him, or the doctrine of the church that had pushed him to the edge of his life, and he considered taking his own life because of all of this. And he felt like he was a freak, he was going to hell, and all of these bad things. And yet he had so much grace, and he shared his story with so much grace. And then what happened was, one of our supporters who listened to his story, he was in the room, came to me, and he had tears in his eyes, and he said, "Frank, that was my story. That was my story." And then he said something remarkable. He said, "But that was 35 years ago." And it's so sad to see that the church has not changed a bit in 35 years. That was the moment when I thought, somebody's got to tell the church, this can't be going on. This is ridiculous, And really, I truly, honestly believe that if people knew that, if even the conservative folks in our church, if they knew what is happening and what is being done to, children and teenagers like my son Tim, if they truly understood that, I don't think they would do it. I think it's ignorance. And so I kind of felt I had to say this to the church. I had to tell them, we have to stop harming beloved children of God. And that's what I did. And so and then at that moment, honestly, when I said what I had to say, I felt free. I was like, it was like a load off my shoulders, and I felt free for the very first time in a long time, free of that fear that I had carried in my heart all this time. And I truly felt like at that moment I had done God's work, and I didn't care if they defrocked me. I didn't care at that moment.
Defrock it.
just defrock it.
Hashtag defrock it.
Yeah. That's amazing. That I mean, you know, I feel like most people who were in that room felt the same way. I mean, especially as your son. You know, like, come on, give the man a break. It's love. Like, it's love. Come on, people. But they couldn't because it was the Book of Discipline. Right? Well, I'm sorry.
Sorry. What's interesting is I spoke with the jurors about that moment, and they didn't really even remember Tim's testimony. It didn't have a big effect on them for whatever reason. So I think you're right that if they fully understood it, then they would feel that way. I think people are aware of what's being said and how people are being made to feel, but they don't really get it. I think people were some of the jurors were a little skeptical of, you know, did the church really have this impact on Tim in this way? Was it really, can you blame the church for him nearly committing suicide? People don't really understand the impact that this is having on people. And that's, you know, what you're talking about with teenagers especially that are going through such a transitional period of their lives and just kind of figuring out who they are. It's those people, the LGBT teenagers especially, they're the reason that I made the film. I think probably Mike and Frank as well. You know, the film, we really want those people to see positive role models and to see parents. We've heard so many parents say, or so many people say, I wish I had parents like you and your wife Bridget. And that breaks my heart every time. I know it does you too. It's very sad. We hear it everywhere. I wish I had parents like you. And so this story is for those people.
I definitely saw the love of the family shine through, especially, I mean, just the trials and tribulations you went through just for Tim, and then it comes out that so you have 4 children, and the eldest 3 are gay.
Yes.
And then the last one's like had to come out and say, I'm not gay. You know?
Sorry, guys.
I had to come out, or I had to go into the closet.
Yeah, and just consider this. I mean, in his universe, in his world, being gay was the norm. I mean, all of his siblings were, and so he felt like the oddball, and he felt like he had to come out as straight. I mean, when does anybody ever have to come out as straight? Other than in your film, right?
Yeah.
The Jesus. Which one?
Another film that we Love Is All You Need. It's a different.
Love Is All You Need. Oh yeah. Talk about that later.
Yeah. Different.
No, yeah. The love of you and your wife definitely shined right through. I felt it, and I even loved you guys more after realizing that about your children. Like, oh, you know, it's just a great attitude, and the kids obviously seem happy now. Before, not knowing what to think, as many children do in America.
But that's a kind of like, if you really think about it, because the situation is sort of inversed in the family, he was the outsider. He felt awkward, and he was, you know, straight. And it's like, you know what I mean?
Sure.
It's like, but wouldn't that be great if it was all just so everyone just understood, and they're like, you are what you are, and you're this and you're that, and let's love each other and stuff. You know, like, wouldn't it be great if that were just the norm?
You know, I feel like for children it is, and for me personally, I don't know if your childhood was different than mine, but I remember not really noticing a difference between anyone. I knew that people looked different, but I didn't understand that meant anything, or that anyone classified someone as a different kind of person, different history, different culture. You know, it was all just, as a child, everything's so innocent. You know, I remember in 2nd grade we were learning about civil rights, and I finally realized my buddy Aaron was black.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. You know, I didn't see it. It didn't make sense to me. And then we started learning African American culture and their struggle. That whole thing.
I had a professor that her big thing would always be, she would use that exact example. She would always say, children see similarities, adults see differences. And then we sort of revert, like, children see similarities and they immediately like, oh, we got this, oh, we both have this, oh, we both have this. And then adults, they immediately like, oh, you're different than me because of this. Yeah. And then the adults will
much better
get to know people
like
and well, at least we agree on things. No. You know what I mean? So I think that's interesting. I think that we should be more like children in that respect.
Totally.
You know, similarities.
Yeah. Live as children, live as free.
Maybe that's what Jesus meant when he said, unless you become like little children, you can't see the kingdom of God.
Yeah.
Hey,
yeah.
you just interpreted it. Oh, wow.
All right, that's my first
right
sermon.
there.
Right there.
Coming up next, Bible study.
So I'd like everyone to turn to page
1. Let's get started. I wanted to ask from the filmmaker's point of view, going into talk to these jurors and to get your talking heads in there. I mean, obviously the family was willing, and that helped build the story immensely. But you needed some people on both sides of the fence. You got Corinne and the guy in orange, Daryl. Call him the guy in orange because he's just Daryl. He's just an unlikable character. But how did you get in there? Let me ask you this: what were your biggest challenges in making this film? I'll just ask you that because I can imagine there's a lot of stuff going on around this subject and the trial and everything. What was the biggest challenge in making it?
Well, one of the biggest challenges is kind of what you're alluding to, is getting people on both sides of the fence, really. My plan from the beginning was to have equal numbers of supporters and opposition. Maybe 3 to 5 people from your church that supported you, and then 3 to 5 that opposed you, and then the same within the entire denomination as well. And what I found as I went along was that most everybody who supported you was more than willing to do an interview. And except for 3 people, everybody opposed to you was not willing to be in the film.
Why do you think that is?
At all. I think they were very skeptical that I would make them out to look foolish or look like something they're not, or make them look bigoted. And really what I wanted was a nuanced film about people that for the most part believe they are doing the right thing. Mm-hmm. It's not about necessarily Frank did the right thing and these other people, they're wrong. I don't think it's necessarily that. I think it's a lot more complex than that. And people think that they're helping the church by having these rules in place, actually. So I was very fortunate to get a few people in the end who did agree to be in the film that were opposed to Frank. I mean, especially in your local church, there was this whole group of people that
the concerned group.
Yeah, they made it clear very early on that they were very upset that this film was being made, and they wanted to prevent it from being made. And I think one of their tactics was to say no, because they would tell us on the phone, well, you can't tell this story in 90 minutes, so you shouldn't bother. And if you can't tell both sides, then you're wasting your time, sort of thing. And
I didn't know the concern group were such avid
concerned about everything.
Oh yeah. But that's what they said. And Daryl said yes at the last minute. I mean, we already had flights booked, and we had to change our flights out of Pennsylvania because Daryl finally said he would do it, because I think they realized this film was being made no matter what, so they might as well show their perspective.
And I think you could have made him look pretty foolish, but the way that you portrayed him was exactly the way he was, and I feel like the documentary was balanced. I saw both sides. I understood the story. I don't think there was a bias one way or the other. So as a filmmaker, you should know, came across very balanced and even-handed. And the overall love message came right through the center. So, I mean, kudos to you for that.
Thank you.
It's I'd say it's very hard to make a film like that so balanced and equal without seeing some kind of agenda. I didn't see any agenda shine through. I saw a message of hope and love for the future, strong family ties, breaks boundaries. That's kind of what I got out of it. Plus many other themes, I mean, it was a pleasure, really, to watch it and to be a part of it. And I think that moving forward, you're kind of like the flagship. Like you said, there's a lot of complaints now, but there hasn't really been a trial since.
No.
And I think that's a good sign of times are changing, tides are turning, people are being more tolerant and open and acceptable, and all the things that the church inherently teaches from the ground up, right?
Yeah.
So the story ends up with you moving to California.
Yeah.
And you're back in the church.
I am.
What's the future hold for Reverend Frank Schaefer?
Oh, if I only knew that. I could prepare, right?
You tell me mine next.
Yeah. But I actually love being a local pastor, and I've always been a local pastor. I never meant to be a national advocate or activist. even though I feel strongly about it. But for most of my life, I worked in a very conservative area, and I was a silent supporter, really, in many ways. So now I've been outed to the world on my theology, in a sense, and so now the cat's out of the bag. You know, I mean, no matter what church I go to next, they all know who I am and what I stand for. So they'll be all progressive churches from here on out, which is sort of like a reward for me. You know, it's really awesome. I can now preach whatever sermon is in my heart. You know,
that's amazing,
and it is amazing. It really is amazing. So
and I had the pleasure a couple weeks ago seeing Frank came to my church, Hollywood United Methodist, and he gave a sermon, and it was like top notch. Because it was interesting. He had come to the church before, and I was not there. I was gone, and so this was actually the first after the film, and after this experience, and after it premiered, was the first time that I actually saw him preach in person, and I was like sitting there, you know, in the front row, like, this is great. Like I see what people are talking about, you know. And it was cool. So
well, thanks.
Yeah, I would love to see you do more weddings. In fact, I forgot to mention, I actually I don't know why I didn't mention it. I was ordained technically. I don't know how serious it is. I mean, I went online.
Oh, cool.
Was this a dare or like?
No. I my mom actually got remarried, and she asked me to officiate it.
Nice.
Oh, yeah, wow. And this is in Colorado, where very the laws. Cool. Thank you. Yeah, it was. I don't know if the laws are different everywhere, but
state to state.
Yeah, and so your state was it more strict or not?
I think you can get internet ordination papers now in Pennsylvania too, just, you know, to do funerals and weddings and that sort of thing.
Okay. Yeah. So I did that so that I could officiate my mom's wedding at Universal Life Church. You know, they're like, we can send you a bumper sticker if you want. Like, no, that's all right. But yeah, I was just thinking, I doubt anyone would throw up a fuss if I decided to go marry, you know, same sex couple. But something about the grandness of the United Methodist Church made this all go down. But
yeah, exactly.
But
you know something funny? Since I've moved to California, which by the way is a very, very progressive state, the only thing I've done in terms of weddings is same-sex weddings.
This is a
That's
big
the
demand.
only thing I've done. No heterosexual wedding in there. It's all gay weddings.
Well, there you go.
So,
ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to get married, if you're
there you go. Give me a call.
If you find yourself in a same-sex relationship and want to seal that knot, and you want to get a celebrity to marry you,
send them a tweet.
You can find them. Where can they find you at? For our listeners at iTunes.
Well, just look for University United Methodist Church in Isla Vista. University Church, United Methodist Church in Isla Vista.
Isla Vista, California.
California. Yeah.
We'll be keeping an eye on you. Thank you so much for everything that it is that you have been through and that you continue to do to push an agenda of love out there in the world. Thank you, and thank you for being here.
Appreciate you saying that.
Mr. Scott Shepard, just any last words from the filmmaker himself who put this out there? Anything that you'd like the viewers to know? Anything that you're working on coming up soon? Or any last words?
Yeah, what we're doing right now is a lot of community screenings of the film. We've had about 100 community screenings so far in churches, on college campuses, and the great thing about that sort of venue compared to in a movie theater is that there are discussions. People come together with people they know, they're meeting new people, and they're having conversations about the themes of the film, which is so important. And so anybody can host a screening of the film. They can go to our website, anactivelovefilm.com. There's instructions how you can host a screening. We can play just about any venue. So I would encourage people to check that out if they are inspired by what they've heard today. You can share this film with your community.
We have that happening a lot. Somebody will come to a festival and see it, and 3 people will walk away and say, "Oh, I'm going to go to the website and host a screening," and they do, and it's really easy. So if anybody's
so cool.
in that, yeah.
There you go. There you have it, everybody. Check out anactivelovefilm.com if you would like to host a screening. If you want to pull your community together and actually get love done, go check it out.
Defrock it.
Defrock it. All right. Well, Mr. Mike C. Manning, Mr. Scott Shepard, Reverend, thank you all so much for being here. I'm Ryan Malaty. This has been an episode of Inside the Documentary. If you love documentaries, please Subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Comment. Let us know what you think. We will be reading. Throw us a thumbs up if you liked what you see. iTunes as well. Subscribe. You don't miss anything. Thank you all again for being here. I'm Ryan Malaty. We'll see you next time.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Popcorn Talk Network or its owners or principals.